Hello, my name is Sofia Elena Martinez. Today, at 32 years old, I serve as a judge on the Los Angeles County Superior Court here in California. But my story didn't begin with this black robe I wear with such pride. It began with a deep wound, opened on a cold December night in 2018, during what should have been a celebration dinner that changed the course of my entire life. I had just graduated from UCLA Law School, summa cum laude, with academic honors that represented 4 years of relentless dedication and sacrifice. My transition had been completed 2 years prior, a journey that had tested every fiber of my being, but ultimately led me to become the woman I had always known myself to be. For the first time in my life, when I looked in the mirror, I saw Sofia staring back at me, confident, educated, and ready to take on the world. That December evening, the Martinez family gathered at our childhood home in East Los Angeles, a small 2-bedroom house that held decades of memories. The walls were decorated with family photos spanning generations, though notably absent were any recent pictures of me. My mother, Maria Elena, had prepared my favorite dishes: tamales with extra cheese, her famous rice and beans, and tres leches cake that could make angels weep. She was still wearing her nurse's scrubs from the hospital where she worked double shifts to help support the family, but her eyes were bright with tears of pride mixed with worry. My younger brother Carlos greeted me with his usual bear hug. "Look at you, counselor," he said with a grin. "UCLA Law School graduate. Who would have thought my big sister would become so accomplished?" But it was my father's silence that filled the room like smoke. Robert Martinez, 58 years old, sat in his worn leather recliner, his calloused hands gripping a Budweiser can. His eyes refused to meet mine. Bob Martinez was a man shaped by old-school values and military discipline. He had served 2 tours in Vietnam, came home to work as a mechanic, and raised his family with firm beliefs about unchanging truths. My transition had shattered his worldview. "So what's the plan now?" he asked, his voice gruff and distant, addressing his questions to the air above my head. I had practiced this moment countless times. "I've been offered a position with a civil rights firm," I began. "We'll be helping people who face discrimination, working on transgender rights, employment issues." That's when he exploded. "Jesus Christ!" Bob slammed his beer can down. "You spent 4 years and God knows how much money to become a lawyer for people like..." He gestured at me with disgust, unable to finish his sentence. "Bob, please," my mother interjected. "No, Maria. I've kept my mouth shut for 3 years while you people celebrated this fantasy. But enough is enough." The room fell silent, except for the ticking of the old clock. "Say what you need to say, Dad," I said quietly. He looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in months. What I saw wasn't just anger. It was grief. He was mourning the son he thought he had lost, unable to see the daughter who had always been there. "You want to know what I think?" His voice was low and cold. "I think you're living in a delusion. No amount of surgery or legal documents or fancy degrees is going to change the facts." He stepped closer, towering over me. "You will never be a real woman." The silence that followed was deafening. I picked up my purse and headed toward the door. "Sofia, wait," my mother called after me, but I was already gone. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could trust myself to drive. As I drove back to my apartment in Westwood, I made a decision. If my father couldn't see me as a real woman, then I would prove him wrong in the most public, undeniable way possible. I would become not just successful, but extraordinary. That night, as I sat in my empty apartment in Westwood surrounded by law books and bar exam study guides, I made a promise to that broken-hearted woman in the mirror. I would transform pain into purpose, rejection into resilience. I would become exactly who I was meant to be, not despite my father's words, but because of them. The journey to the bench would be long and brutal, filled with obstacles and setbacks, but I was Sofia Elena Martinez, UCLA Law School graduate, and I had already survived the hardest test of all, remaining true to myself in a world determined to erase me. The real fight was just beginning. 4 years later, in 2022, I stood in the marble lobby of the Los Angeles County Courthouse, adjusting my navy blue blazer and checking my reflection in the polished surface of the elevator doors. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the broken-hearted graduate who had fled her family's dinner table. My hair was pulled back in a professional chignon, my makeup was subtle but flawless, and my eyes held a steely determination that hadn't been there before. I had become a force to be reckoned with in the legal community. The past 4 years at Chen & Associates had been a masterclass in legal warfare and social justice. Daniel Chen, my law school classmate and now business partner, had taken a chance on me when other firms hesitated, seeing potential where others saw risk. His parents had immigrated from Taiwan when he was 5, and he understood what it meant to fight for your place in a world that questioned your belonging. Together, we had built a reputation for taking on the cases that mattered, the ones that could change lives and challenge systemic discrimination. Sophia, you ready for this? Daniel appeared beside me, wearing his confident smile. The media's already here. This case is going to make waves. We were representing Marcus Rivera, a transgender man who worked for the city but was denied equal health benefits for his husband. It was a discrimination lawsuit that had garnered significant media attention. The courtroom was packed. In the gallery, I spotted my brother Carlos, who had come to support me despite our family situation. "You didn't tell me you were coming," I whispered as I passed his row. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, counselor," he whispered back. "Mom wanted to be here too, but she's working a double shift. She's proud of you, Sophia." The case was a complex web of bureaucratic discrimination. For 3 hours, I methodically dismantled the city's defense, demonstrating how their actions violated both state and federal law. "Marcus Rivera isn't asking for special treatment," I told the jury during my closing argument. "He's asking for the same rights that every other married city employee receives. He's asking to be seen as a full human being." The jury deliberated for only 2 hours, returning with a unanimous verdict in our favor. As the courtroom erupted in quiet celebration, Judge Patricia Williams called both attorneys to the bench. "Ms. Martinez," she said quietly, "that was exceptional work. Have you ever considered pursuing a judgeship?" The question hit me like lightning. I hadn't really thought about it, Your Honor." "Well, you should. The bench needs more attorneys who understand what it means to fight for justice. Think about it." That evening, I met Carlos for dinner. "So, Judge Martinez," he said, raising his glass. "Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" As we prepared to leave, Carlos grew serious. "You know, he asks about you," he said quietly. "Dad. He never says your name, but he asks. Mom tells him about your cases, shows him articles. He keeps them in a shoebox in his closet." The revelation hit me harder than any legal victory. My father had been silently documenting my success, collecting evidence of my accomplishments like sacred artifacts. He what? Newspaper clippings, printouts from the internet, every case you've won, every article that mentions you. He's been following your career, Sophia. When customers come into the shop, he brags about you. "My daughter, the lawyer," he tells them, though he still struggles to say your name out loud. I stared at my brother, processing this information. The man who had rejected me so completely had been watching from the shadows, quietly proud but unable to bridge the gap his own words had created. 3 months later, Judge Williams made an announcement that would change everything. "Sophia, I'm going to be retiring next year. Would you be interested in being considered for an appointment to the Superior Court?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. The appointment process took 8 months of interviews, background checks, and public hearings. Rebecca organized support from the LGBTQ+ community. Daniel provided glowing references. Former clients testified about my dedication, but the most surprising support came from an unexpected source. Carlos called me one evening, his voice trembling. "Sophia, you need to sit down. Dad wrote a letter to the governor's office, supporting your appointment." I couldn't speak. "He spent weeks on it. He talks about your intelligence, your dedication, your integrity. He says you're the kind of person who should be making decisions about justice." "Did he sign it with his name?" "Robert Martinez, proud father of Sophia Elena Martinez." On November 15, 2022, Governor Gavin Newsom announced my appointment to the Los Angeles County Superior Court. I was 32 years old, one of the first openly transgender judges in California history, and the youngest judge ever appointed to the Los Angeles County bench. The announcement made headlines across the state and beyond, not just because of my age or my identity, but because of the unprecedented support I had received from the legal community. The swearing-in ceremony filled the courthouse where I had won my first case. The same marble lobby where I had once stood nervous and uncertain. Rebecca was there, beaming with pride alongside colleagues from across the legal community. My mother stood in her best dress, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter achieve something she had never dared to dream possible. Carlos was beside her, recording everything on his phone so he could share this moment with future generations of our family. And there, in the very last row, wearing a suit I had never seen before, stood my father. He had come, despite years of silence, despite the pain and the distance between us. Our eyes met across the crowded room. He nodded once, a barely perceptible acknowledgement, and I saw something I had never seen before: respect. Pure, undeniable respect for the woman his daughter had become. Judge Sofia Elena Martinez. The words had a beautiful ring to them. 18 months later, on a humid Tuesday morning in May 2024, I sat in my chambers reviewing the day's docket when my clerk, Jennifer, knocked on my door with an unusual expression on her face. She had been working with me since my appointment and had become not just a professional colleague, but a trusted confidant who understood the weight of my position. Judge Martinez, there's something you need to know about the Rodriguez case this afternoon, she said. One of the witnesses listed for the defense is Robert Martinez. The papers fell from my hands like autumn leaves, scattering across my mahogany desk. After all these years, after all the careful distance we had maintained, my father was going to appear in my courtroom, not as a proud family member observing my success, but as a witness in a criminal case, legally required to address me with the respect that had been denied to me for so long. The irony was almost too perfect to be coincidental. Tommy Rodriguez, a 45-year-old construction worker, had been driving under the influence when he crashed his pickup truck into a parked car outside Martinez Auto Repair, my father's shop. Bob Martinez had witnessed the entire incident and would be testifying about what he saw that night. I spent hours wrestling with whether to recuse myself, but technically, my father was simply a witness. His testimony would be factual. More than that, this might be the universe offering me the closure I had been seeking. That afternoon, I entered my courtroom with a mixture of anticipation and dread that I hadn't felt since my first day on the bench. The familiar routine of afternoon session usually calmed my nerves. The orderly progression of cases, the measured rhythm of legal proceedings, the comforting weight of judicial responsibility. But today, every sound seemed amplified, every detail more vivid. The courtroom was modest in size, with dark wood paneling and brass fixtures that spoke to the solemnity of the proceedings. And there, in the third row, sat my father. He looked older than I remembered, his hair now completely gray, and his face marked by new lines around his eyes that spoke to the years of silence between us. He wore the same navy suit from my swearing-in ceremony, and his calloused hands clutched a manila folder that I assumed contained his notes about the incident. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away, but not before I saw something I had never seen in his face before. Uncertainty. All rise for the Honorable Judge Sofia Elena Martinez, the bailiff announced, including my father. Please be seated, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. We are here for the matter of People versus Tommy Rodriguez. The case proceeded routinely until the moment I had been anticipating. The defense calls Robert Martinez to the stand. My father walked toward the witness stand, movements careful and deliberate. As the clerk administered the oath, I studied his face, looking for any sign of the man who had once been my hero before becoming my greatest source of pain. The questioning established the facts methodically: his observation of the accident, his interaction with the defendant, his call to 911, his wait for emergency responders. Throughout his testimony, he never looked directly at me, answering questions clearly and professionally. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the arms of the witness chair, the careful precision with which he chose his words. This man who had always been so confident, so sure of his opinions, looked genuinely nervous sitting in my courtroom. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The prosecutor stood for cross-examination. Mr. Martinez, if you need clarification on anything, you can ask the judge for guidance. And if you need to address the court directly, you would address Judge Martinez as Your Honor. Do you understand? There it was. The moment crystallized in the fluorescent lighting of Department 47 of the Los Angeles County Superior Court. My father, the man who had told me I would never be a real woman, being instructed on how to properly address me with the title I had earned through years of dedication, sacrifice, and professional excellence, the title that represented not just my legal authority, but my complete vindication as the woman I had always known myself to be. Yes, he said quietly, I understand. The cross-examination proceeded smoothly, until an unexpected moment. The defense attorney asked a question that required a ruling, and the prosecutor objected. Calls for speculation, Your Honor. Every eye turned to me. This was it. The first time my father would be required to address me directly, to acknowledge my authority as the presiding judge. The silence stretched. My father looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since I had entered the courtroom. Your Honor, he said, his voice clear and respectful, I believe the prosecutor's objection is correct. Sustained, I ruled, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. The words hung in the air like music. Your Honor, after 6 years of silence, he had addressed me with the respect my position demanded. But more than that, he had addressed me as his daughter. After the trial concluded, my father lingered in the gallery. Finally, he approached the bench. Your Honor, he said quietly, using my title even though formal proceedings had ended. Could I speak with you for a moment? Chambers, I said simply. 5 minutes. In my office, we sat in silence for a long moment. 6 years of absence filling the room like smoke. The weight of everything unsaid, every missed birthday, every holiday without contact, every achievement celebrated without his presence, hung between us like a tangible thing. I'm proud of you, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I know I don't have the right to say that after everything that happened, after the pain I caused you, but I am. I'm proud of the woman you've become, of what you've accomplished, of the courage it took to become exactly who you were meant to be. The words I had longed to hear for so many years felt different than I had imagined, less triumphant, more bittersweet. The healing they offered came with the recognition of all the time we had lost, all the conversations we hadn't had, all the moments of support and connection that could never be recovered. I was wrong, he continued, tears forming in his eyes, about everything, about who you are, about what you deserved. You are more real, more authentic than anyone I know, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. Thank you, I said simply. That means more than you know. I kept every article, he said, showing me his phone. Every case you won. I have a whole folder. I've been following your career, bragging about you to customers. My daughter the judge, I tell them. As he prepared to leave, my father extended his hand, then paused. Would it be appropriate to hug my daughter? He asked. I embraced him, feeling the familiar strength in his arms. He smelled like motor oil and Old Spice, exactly as he always had. I love you, Sophia, he whispered. I always have. I just forgot how to show it. That evening, I called my mother for the first time in 2 years. We talked for 3 hours, catching up on everything we had missed, sharing stories and memories that had been locked away during our family's years of silence. We planned a family dinner for the following weekend, the first time the Martinez family would be together at the same table since that December night in 2018. Mija, she said through her tears, I knew this day would come. I knew love would find a way to heal what fear had broken. As I prepared for bed that night, I stood before the same mirror where I had made my promise 6 years earlier. The reflection showed a successful judge, a respected member of the legal community, a woman who had transformed pain into purpose and rejection into resilience. But more than that, it showed a daughter who had finally, after years of exile, found her way home. My name is Sophia Elena Martinez. I am a woman, a judge, a daughter, and a survivor. And today, for the first time in 6 years, I am all of those things with the full acceptance of the man whose opinion mattered most. Your Honor, indeed,